just want to wrap up. Excellent. I want to wrap up our discussion of prophecy. There's a lot more of Rambam to read, and I will remind you that he did say that when he was younger, before he wrote Moreh Nevukhim, he had thought about writing a book called the Book of Prophecy, Sefer Nevuah, because this was a really important issue in his time, Jewish circles, in the non-Jewish circles, the world in which he lived. But he didn't write a book of prophecy. He simply incorporated the prophecy theme into his Moreh Nevukhim. And we read a couple of the chapters. I hope they gave you some idea of the complexity of his thought. But what we're going to do now is we're going to read the 7th chapter of the laws of the principles of the Torah in his Mishneh Torah. Mishneh Torah, written about 1180, is the great halachic guidebook for the Jewish people, rabbinic Judaism, an immensely powerful, comprehensive, and beautifully written work, the only work Rambam wrote in Hebrew, and he took great pride in that Hebrew. And the fascinating thing, of course, is that although it is ostensibly a record and a compilation of the entire oral law, it contains, in addition to the laws of Shabbat and theft and crime and bailment and prayer and Yom Kippur, philosophical bits and pieces all over the place. So the Mishneh Torah is proof, if we needed proof, that the Rambam would not allow a rabbinic Jew to say, I can be philosophy rein. I don't need to take any interest in philosophy at all. No. Rambam was passionate about the fact that everybody, they want to consider themselves rabbinic Jews, even though in the Moreh Nevukhim, of course, he says, look, if you only care about the law, then don't read the Guide for the Perplexed. This is not for the perplexed, the ones who are seeking reconciliation at a very high level between philosophy and Judaism, but this is a book for every Jew who's interested in knowing about how to live a Jewish life. And yet the Rambam insists on putting whole sections of his theology and philosophy into it. So clearly he believed that the regular common or garden Jew also required some measure of philosophical and theological thought. The Havdil Elef Havdalot, citing Socrates, an unexamined life is not worth living. It's not only important to do halakha, you've got to understand the theological principles that underlie Judaism, at least to the extent that the Rambam thought that most people would be able to handle them. And this is what he does in relation to prophecy in Hilchot Yisodei Torah, Perek Zayin. We're going to read that now. Should be fairly easy. So I'm going to share screen. Share screen. Can I share screen? Yael? Okay. So why can't?
Yes, you should be able to share screen.
Okay. It was there.
If Yael is the host, and she's got to do the screen sharing.
No, but I gave it to everyone. Everyone can share screen.
Okay. The document was up, and I can't see where to go on here. No, this is not it. No, back here.
Go into your side there. Yeah, go there. Get the document. Recent items. Not recent. Oh my God.
Nevukhim. At all. Wrong one. This is Let's go. Moreh Nevukhim and PH. Moreh Nevukhim 12. It was here. This is the one. This is the screen I want. Okay.
Ask if they can see it.
So can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, mi'yesodei hadat leida she'ha'el menabeh b'nei ha'adam. You should know, a principle of our faith, that God provides human beings with a capacity to prophesy. Now, the Arabic is also very delicate here. I think that Rambam does a good job of presenting in Hebrew what he wants to get at. B'nei ha'adam, by the way, does that mean Jews or everybody? If I say B'nei ha'adam,
Everybody.
what do I mean?
Body.
Everybody, okay, human beings. And that's true. And Menabeh is a form that tells us that God has created us, every human being, Jew or non-Jew, with a capacity to prophesy. Okay, very careful language and very correct indeed. This, of course, is against Yehuda Levi, who says that only Jews can be true prophets. Yehuda Levi, by the way, said that there is a factor in the Jewish soul that makes it amenable to be Jewish. So he's not very happy with converts. Maimonides is very happy. It's a different way of looking at things. And Bnei Adam, of course, means non-Jews as well. But you only become a prophet if you've got tremendous intellectual capacity. Gibor b'midotav, if you're an extremely ethical person, can overcome your passions. And you can always overcome your inclinations. You are precise and wide in your understanding. What is shalem begufo? You have to be physically sound, and you have to have the capacity for what we've called koach hamedameh, the imaginative capacity that links with your intellectual capacity, which is of the highest caliber, and that gets you to be a prophet. By the way, could Muhammad be a prophet?
Why not?
Certainly not. Muhammad was illiterate.
Yeah.
The angel Gabriel taught him over 23 years. He met Gabriel in a cave when he was meditating, and he learnt the Quran by heart, and everybody learnt it by heart. So he transferred it orally. If you look at the Quran, Surah 7, sections 157 to 158, Muhammad is called Al-Nabi Al-Umi. Now, Al-Nabi clearly means a prophet, but Al-Umi means he could not read. Okay? So this is a gentle dig at Muhammad, all right, which is important. Maimonides is really only concerned with Muhammad. So bear that in mind. So what if somebody has all these capacities, okay? And naturally the prophecy, they're prepared for it. And then they occupy themselves with Pardes. What's Pardes? Well, this, of course, speaks to a traditional Talmudic Jew who knows Masechet Chagiga. When he opens up and he reads Pardes, what is Pardes? Maaseh Breshit and Maaseh Merkava. The two secrets of rabbinic Judaism, okay? The creation story and Yechezkel's story of God's chariot, how God communicates with the world. And you understand that. And you become less and less regular, and in your life you become much more connected with higher things. You're not involved with the vanities of the time, and your soul, okay, doesn't concern itself with vain things. I don't think he was keen on stamp collecting or playing guitar or going to the pub. I'm in the middle of line 11. Your mind is always on higher things. You are underneath God's throne, which is an interesting expression. God's throne, of course, is what Isaiah saw. Okay, he saw that God was sitting on his throne. Va'eret Hashem Yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa, and that means burning desire to be close to God. La'avin ba'otanat surot hakadoshot hataorot. Surot of forms, ideas, the most abstract ideas, the most powerful, philosophically and theologically sound abstract ideas. And you understand the world, biology, physics, chemistry, biochemistry, astronomy, you name it, you know it. From the highest metaphysical ideas to the very umbilical cord of the earth, where all nature springs from, v'yodea ma God lo, so you know how great God is. Miyad ruach hakodesh shoreh alav. Immediately you become filled or gifted with a Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is the lowest form of prophecy. Uve'et shetanuach alav haruach titarev nafsho b'ma'alat hamalachim. Remember, angels are inner capacities. Everything has in nature human beings. So this is our prophetic angel. The prophetic angel within us begins to stir. And these are called ishim. So when you meet an ish, or when you see an ish in a dream, this is the beginning of the prophetic spirit stirring in you. And then you become another man or person. You feel that you have changed. And you are above the rest of the wise, Aristotle and company. And the Rambam always has a verse. Okay, Shaul was told that he was going to prophesy with the Bnei HaNevi'im, with the trainee prophets, and you'll become another person. And what Shmuel meant, I guess, was that you will become a person who's fit to be a king. I guess Samuel was aiming at a philosopher king with a prophetic overlay. And in fact, Shaul was very virtuous. And if you think of Shaul's past before he became a king, we don't hear about much at all. And apparently, all he says, Mishichmo v'ma'ala, he was tall, he was very imposing, but we don't hear that he was a bit of a lad like David. He wasn't running around, wasn't fighting, he wasn't killing Philistines, and he seemed to have been a very ideal person. And that's why probably Samuel chose him. Okay, David's history is colorful, to say the least. So Shaul and the Rambam again will read theology into everything. Okay, but then Onkelos does too, and Onkelos is, of course, Rambam's great teacher when it comes to understanding Tanakh, and he says this is nefachta leish acher, which is again something he does deal with in the Moreh Nevukhim chapter we didn't read. But all of this is much more easy to understand than the long passage we read, okay? And it gives a person who reads the Mishneh Torah a grasp. It's very important to understand what he's saying. That he says, Menabeh et b'nei ha'adam, gives the power to any person to become a prophet. Then the conditions follow, but this is the Maimonidean doctrine. Comes from within.
Can I ask you something?
Ourselves. Sure, that sounds like Yeshua.
That's right.
How did I guess?
We have learned that
Welcome.
the Rambam says that the prophecy is not automatic. And here he says it's automatic. So how do you...
No, he doesn't say it's automatic. Rambam, as we learn, says that everybody can develop a prophetic personality.
That's
But
right.
to get God's prophecy communicated to the prophet, that takes a decision by God. He's going to come to that very soon in Hilchot.
Miyad Ruach HaKodesh Shoreh Alav.
Ruach HaKodesh certainly comes. If you prepare yourself sufficiently well, you will get Ruach HaKodesh. Absolutely. David had Ruach HaKodesh when he killed the bear and the lion, because that was the sort of person he was. Moshe had Ruach HaKodesh when he killed the Egyptian. Rambam, in a passage we did not read, explained that Ruach HaKodesh is the basic drive, okay, on the way to becoming a Navi, okay? But it's
HaKodesh is not Nevuah,
it's the lowest form, okay? The lowest form.
but the lowest form comes automatic.
The lowest form comes automatically. The medium way becomes automatically. Rambam will tell us that you can be a prophet and never prophesy because you've gone through all of the preparatory stages. Let's read on. Bet. Hanaviim ma'alot hen. Listen, there are degrees of prophecy. כמו שיש בחוכמה חכם גדול מחברו, כך בנבואה נביא גדול מנביא. Wise people at different levels of wisdom. There are big geniuses, middle-sized geniuses, and little geniuses, okay? Some of us are frustrated, but that's just how it is. You've got to accept these gradations. So, same thing with a prophet. Little prophet, middle-sized prophet, major prophet. Now, the prophets, as we said, they get their prophecy in a dream at night when their imaginative capacity is at its most formidable. Because their lives are devoted to higher things, that connection between their intellect and their imaginative capacity is very close. So they only imagine things that are good and wonderful and marvelous and full of wisdom. Or bayom, but you could also have vision by day. Shetipol aleihen tardema, kemo shene'emar, b'mareh elav etvada, b'chalom adaber bo. When God speaks about prophets in general, as opposed to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, no, says to Aaron and Miriam, no, your prophets, they will only see me in a vision or in a dream. A vision by day, dream at night. וכולן כשמתנבאים איבריהם מזדעזעים וכוח הגוף כשל ועשתונותיהם מתטרפות ותישאר הדעה פנויה להבין מה שתראה. They are seized up. Their bodies shake. Their bodies become weak. They're overtaken by this force, okay? That's when you know that you're receiving a prophecy, as opposed to the earlier degrees of Ruach HaKodesh and what happens afterwards. Kemo shene'emar b'Avraham, Rambam has a proof. Avraham is about to prophesy, and a terrible, fearful darkness falls upon him. Okay? Or kemo shene'emar b'Daniel, v'hodi nefach alai lemashchit, and my splendor turned to something destructive. Lo atzarti kochi. Actually, hodine pachalai mashchit means that my face became warped, okay, became distorted, and I was not able to have enough strength to stand. So your prophets, okay, when do they know that they are prophesying? Okay, Yoshua, they've reached a level of prophecy. Now they know they're prophesying. Suddenly they're overcome by this fit, okay? They shake, they twitch, and they are either in a dream-like state or they are in a trance-like state, okay? And then their preparedness allows them to receive a vision that's going to be communicated to others. Now, what does Avraham get? He gets a vision of the Brit Ben Habitarim. How does the Rambam understand that? He understands that as follows. Avraham is intellectually extremely advanced. He's ethically extremely advanced. His thoughts are all on higher things. What is he thinking about? A Jewish people and its future. He's thinking about this all the time. And one day, he imagines, or he gets a dream and a vision in which that thought and all of that's meditation about the future of the Jewish people, how he is going to become the father of a people, he suddenly gets a prophecy that says they're going to be in exile for 400 years. They are going to be, 400 years just means a long time. They are going to suffer. They will come out with great rechush, and they will become the nation. Avraham then understands his prophecy is a vision, a concrete vision, symbols. There are animals that are cut in two, covenant with him and God. But all of this is in his prophetic vision. He has a communication with God, and all the things Abraham was thinking about. What is the best way of producing a godly nation? And he realizes that it is not from strength, from victory, from conquering others. It is from experiencing victimhood, coming out of that, and developing a sense of sympathy and empathy. That's the most important thing. Now,
How does the prophet know that he's prophesying and not hallucinating?
Well, if all of these things happen to your body, Yoshua, it's not the normal thing, right? As a doctor, you would agree. Then you must know that something is happening to you, okay? And remember, the prophet has been thinking about this. I'm giving you an ultra Maimonidean
Form
view.
of ecstasy.
Ecstasy, all of these states. But I'm coming back to Rambam. Rambam says that you will have spent many hours, if not years, thinking about a certain problem or certain issue. And I'm going to open this up a bit more, but we will just read the first line of Halacha Gimel. Hadvarim shemodi'im lanavi b'mareh hanevuah. Again, if you read this with me in a regular fashion, orderly fashion, it'll be clear. Modi'im, things are made known to the prophet. As we said, you prepare yourself for the umpteenth time, then you get a vision, and your body changes, everything about you changes, but you're sure you've been expecting this. You've been expecting this, okay?
This is what's happening.
But then God makes himself known. What he calls the active intellect, Sechel HaPoel, or the ninth sphere, which we haven't gone into and we shan't. Then the idea, that symbol of your thinking, of your such deep thinking, comes and you see a vision. Derech mashal modi'in lo umiyad yichek b'libo pitaron hamashal b'mareh hanevuah. You'll see something and you'll understand. So Avraham, I'm going to give you, as I said, my ultra Maimonidean view with a couple more. Avraham is thinking about how his descendants are going to become the Jewish people, that people which is going to be a guide for the whole of humankind. He's thinking and meditating and growing and learning and growing and learning. And then one time, there is a communication from God. Okay, there is a vision. And he understands what the vision is. Okay, the vision is this darkness, these creatures of prey, and this is the pitaron. The way in which the Jewish people are going to be born is through a crucible of pain, a crucible of suffering. But out of that suffering is going to come the greatest physical and spiritual and moral standing. And let me take this a little further. Avraham, what will Rambam say about the Akedah? Would he say, really, Avraham, go up to Har HaMoriah and offer his son? Rambam will tell us that this is a Moreh Nevukhim. This is a prophetic vision. Avraham is thinking constantly and deeply about what it means to be a server of God. Yirei Elohim. Remember, what does God say to Avraham after the Akedah? Ki ata yadati ki yirei Elohim ata v'lo chasachta et bincha et yichidecha mimeni. I know now that you are a Yirei Elohim. Avraham is grappling with the problem of what does it mean to be a true fear of God? And then he thinks about, well, what is the greatest sacrifice that God could ask from me? Would I be prepared to give it? And he enters into a prophetic state where God is Modia, and he sees God coming, saying to him, go to Har HaMoriah 3 days. He goes there. He overcomes in his vision any doubt that this is what God meant. And he also sees that an angel comes and says, do not kill Yitzchak. If we take Yonah, okay? Yonah is a prophet, prepared himself for prophecy according to the Rambam. When God gives him a prophecy, Yonah says, no, I don't like this prophecy. I've been thinking about Nineveh, Ashur. Yonah, according to the Midrash, is the son of a woman, okay, who Elisha promised would give birth to a child. Child was born. Now the woman said, do not deceive me, okay? I want this boy to grow up. The boy faints. He's brought home. Off goes the woman, and she throws herself down the ground in front of Elisha and says, he's dead. Elisha comes, he revives the boy. Now, the woman of Shunem, okay, it says that she was inspired to give hospitality to Elisha because he was Dover Emet. She wants Emet. And therefore, he's Yonah ben Amittai. She calls him Yonah ben Amittai. Eliyahu, sorry, not Elisha, Eliyahu is Emet. So he's thinking about Nineveh. Ashur, he's in the northern kingdom. Ashur is the greatest enemy. What's going to happen? He thinks deeply. He's a prophet. But then, when the word of God comes to him and he understands what he has to do is to go to Nineveh, perhaps correct the people of Nineveh, make them better, he says, but it's not going to work. They might change for a bit, but they will not change permanently. He runs. And what happens? Rambam says you cannot live in the belly of a fish, however big it is, for 3 days. You certainly cannot pray inside there, okay? We have not survived. There was a 19th century tale of a sailor, American sailor, I think it was, swallowed by a whale, but he came out in a very bad way indeed. So Rambam says all this takes place in a vision. And what he is understanding from the vision and the way he prays to God is that you cannot run away from God. So what we're learning here is that if you are a prophet and God wants you to prophesy, you'll have a hard time running away. Imesak at shamayim shamata, says Tehillim. If you fly up to the heavens, I am there. Ve'im tatzia b'shaol, and if you make your bed in the netherworld, hineni, I am there. So it's a vision about not running away from the prophecy. You can try. So Bilam's talking donkey is a vision. Bilam is, of course, grappling with. He is a very talented individual. He is very high up on the ladder of Nevuah, but he has a weakness for power, for wealth, even though he says every time, I can only say what God said. And he's not quite sure whether he wants to be true to his prophecy or try and overcome God. So the first 2 times when he sees the people of Israel, he uses his ksamim, something which is not prophecy. The 3rd time, remember, he turns to God. And that's when he has his prophecy. And that is when, for a short while, he is a true prophet. But it's a vision. Whatever he sees and the words and the Mizbachot, Rambam will tell you this is a vision. And this is how he's criticized. This is for what he's criticized by Ramban, Nachmanides. Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu has a vision of a struggle with an angel or with an ish. It's an ish, remember? And then, of course, he suffers from a dislocated hip or whatever it is. Ramban says, if it didn't happen truly, if it was a vision, how come he had a dislocated hip? And what will the answer be?
Psychosomatic illness.
Psychosomatic, Ralbag. Sometimes your visions or dreams are so powerful, you feel the pain. Okay? Donkeys don't talk. All of this was Bilam's internal struggle, but because he was a Navi, he gets a vision from God, and he's meant to interpret it and understand it. So this is what the Rambam, I think, is saying.
Bilam didn't reach any of these qualities which Rama requires for a Navi. So how did he get a Navi? Become a Navi, Bilam.
How do you know he didn't?
At
From the text of the Torah itself. Okay?
At least to the Midrashim, he certainly didn't.
I said from the text of the Torah. But the Rambam is a great commentator on Tanakh. This will be worth a shiur in itself of his system for interpreting Tanakh. But you've seen how he uses psukim here, there, and everywhere. Okay? So we will let that go.
I also have a question. Sorry,
Sure,
may I?
Yael.
But what I'm confused about is as soon as two people are witnessing the same, so how can you say that it's an internal process of one?
What do you mean by two people witnessing the same?
If two people,
Abraham has a vision of Akedah, say, okay? The vision goes from the beginning to the end. Does it say an Abraham
participant in it?
Does it just a second? Say that Abraham came home and he told Sarah. Now the Midrash says yes, but the text does not say so. So the way Rambam reads Tanakh, it's full of prophecies. All these prophecies were in a vision. He's famous for that. Ramban, many commentators find it very difficult. Other commentators are very happy. Okay.
I wanted to refer to the parents of Shimshon, because over there both saw the Ish, both had an encounter with him.
Right. So they did indeed have a prophetic vision, because the issue was they are going to need to rear this child, and they felt there was something special. So they're thinking about that, and then they get a vision. They get an ish, which, as we said, is the lowest form, which is ruach hakodesh. Shimshon himself, it says vatipaem bo ruach. The Spirit of God began, and then as he was walking around the vineyard, he's able to overcome a lion. He was thinking about his destiny. So Manoach and his wife were obviously very deeply concerned about the fact they had some kind of premonition. They were going to give birth to a special boy who would save Israel. This was on their minds. That's a Maimonidean approach. Okay?
So two people can think the same. I mean, two people can have the same vision.
They could. A similar vision. Not at the same time, okay? But each one gets it. First of all, Eshet Manoach, who is much more focused. And then Manoach is brought into that issue. It's a low level, but it's a real issue, okay? Tzipora, Yocheved, how does she know to hide this particular baby? Vatere oto ki tovhu. Now, I don't think there's a prophetic vision there. There was a sense that this boy was worth making a great effort to save. So again, this brings us all into Rambam's rational approach and his wisdom approach rather than will, okay? Let's read a little more.
Would you say that at the time of the Akedah, Avraham Avinu and Yitzchak Avinu had the same vision at the same time?
I'm not sure that Yitzchak had a vision at all. I think that the Rambam would say, and he does say, this was Abraham's vision. Abraham had a vision involving his son because he had been meditating deeply on the issue of what does it mean to be a Yirei Elohim? Give up everything. Would I give up my son? everything I've struggled for in life, everything I've dreamed about is in this boy. Am I going to give him up? And then he gets a vision in which he plays out the fact that he's prepared to give up the son, and then the angel comes. So God, in fact, meets him halfway and says, yes, you are a Yirei Elohim, but I certainly don't want human sacrifice. That is his vision. And that may have been a blueprint for Yirat Elohim amongst the Israelite people from then on. Okay? But the Rambam would
What is the merit of Abraham if he never did it, if he only dreamt it?
he never did it when he wasn't dreaming either. Even if you say this is not a prophetic vision, you could ask the same question. And the answer will be exactly the same. In order to prove that Abraham would have been prepared, but he didn't do it. That's the whole point. Da'aka, as Rav Kook says. He didn't do it. Whether it's in a vision or not, the same result. So, sometimes you know what your symbolic vision means. Okay? Like Yaakov Avinu, line 23. Malachim olim v'yordim bo. Yaakov is running away. He's going to Haran. That is realities, shall we say. And he has a vision. He has climbing the ladder of prophecy. So he goes up and he comes down, as Rambam said in the Moreh Nevukhim. Or he sees that life is full of ups and downs. How about Yechezkel's beasts, okay? Are they real? He saw them in a vision. They mean something. Yechezkel was contemplating, how are we going to understand God's presence? And he does it through these living creatures. What does Yirmiyahu see? He sees a staff of an almond tree and a boiling pot. What does that mean? But Yirmiyahu knows that Bavel is close by. He's a prophet. He's concerned with what's going to happen. And then God gives him a vision, and he understands that the Makel Shaked, Hasir Dafuach, Asher Panav Tzafona, it's facing north. Which nation is in the north? No, Yirmiyahu. Which nation is in the north? Bavel. Okay? So he understands the picture and he can tell the people, I saw a vision in which there was this, and they listen. Their ears prick up because this is in dramatic form. Now he says, do you understand? I don't know whether you read Zechariah recently, but it is a measuring stone. Zechariah has this measuring stone, and it's to measure up the punishment to the wicked because their greed has caused them to covet whatever they could see, and they'll be punished. So instead of telling the people, like, you're coveting and you'll be punished, and you cheat on your weights and measures, he, as it were, carries this huge stone on his shoulder. Okay, everybody says, why are you carrying that stone on your shoulder? He says, well, I saw in a prophetic vision that this stone is going to come and roll down and finish you lot off. Or, of course, Yechezkel, the Megillah. What happened to Yechezkel? What did he do to the scroll? What vision did he see? What vision did Yechezkel see in relation to the scroll? He had to eat it. Yechezkel had to eat a lot of funny things. Anybody read the book of Yechezkel?
Johnny Bray or whatever.
Right. What other funny things, Jeff, did Yechezkel have to eat?
Turds.
And you are, of course, on mute.
Turds.
Can't remember all the details actually. There was he had to eat some of the non-kosher thing he had to eat too. I've forgotten what it was. Just trying to
Okay.
recall.
He had to eat a disgusting food. He also had to eat the scroll. Then he also had to eat, then was all sorts of breads, Ezekiel bread and all that, which can be sold in shops, okay? Yechezkel is doing odd things all the time, but all of them mean something. They're a prophetic vision. He's dealing with the problem of how to establish a Jewish nation and life in Bavel. when there's no Bet HaMikdash, no national home. So all of these things, the scroll of the words, if the scroll of the law goes into him, the Torah is the way to compensate for the loss of the Bet HaMikdash. Okay, I'm giving you a lot, but these are the things that Rambam says dotted through the Moreh Nevukhim. Sometimes the vision only give you a pitaron, like God says, I'll punish you. And sometimes you only have this peculiar symbol, thing that you see, and you don't know what it actually means. It's difficult to figure it out. But this is what your regular prophets do. When you read the Tanakh, all these things are happening all the time, right? Okay, now, Kol Hanviim En Mitnabim B'chol Et Sheyirtzu. Yoshua, this is for you. Okay, prophets will not prophesy whenever they want to. Ela mechavnim da'atam v'yoshvim smechim v'tovei lev u'mitbodedim. They are in a state of calm. I'm not sure that simcha means joy. Yirmiyahu wasn't very joyful the prospect of the destruction of the Jewish Commonwealth, but it means that they are in a state of calm equilibrium. Okay, and their thoughts are on higher things. Neither sadness nor being very apathetic. Simcha. As again, simcha I think means calm equilibrium. It's a more spiritual simcha. Doesn't mean you're on a high. But musical instruments do help. They calm you down. The Hem of Akshin, they calmed down Saul, remember? When he was having his problems. Hem of Akshim Nevuah. They seek prophecy, but Yoshua, it will not necessarily come. Mitnabim. Mitnabim is a reflexive, it's a hitpael. You make yourself ready for prophecy. Klomar ma'achin b'derech ha'nevuah ad sheinabu, kamo she'ata omer, ploni mitgadel. Rambam emphasizes this in his Mishneh Torah, like you make yourself more mature, okay? So you make yourself ready for prophecy. Elu shehem mevakshim litnabeh, hem nikraim b'nei hanavim. And these are the groups of b'nei hanavim that we find in the Tanakh. Okay, Yeshua lines 32 and 33. You might not get it. You might or you mightn't. This is the stage at which God decides to give you the actual prophecy. Now, when we learned the Moreh Nevukhim, which expectant prophet in the making did not get a prophecy at all? Remember? We gave an example. Rambam. Baruch ben Neriah, remember? Yirmiyahu's aide de camp. All right? Didn't get it. He was disappointed. And Yirmiyahu says, sorry, nitgadalta, but wasn't enough. Or for some reason. Rambam says that at the end, that the prophecy will only come to the prophet when God is interested. And that is part of God's plan, okay? So you could be a potential prophet your whole life. In fact, you might be a prophet and you might never say a word to anyone at all. But inside you know that you are a prophet. We didn't read the passages in the Moreh about the difference between regular prophets and Moshe Rabbeinu, but Rambam says this is a vital difference. Rabban shall call Haneviim. And prophet talk, of course, is basic to the theology of anybody living in 12th century Islamic world of Aristotelian, Platonic, and also al-Razali, Kalam, and Sufi theology. And know there's a difference. Shekol Haneviim b'chalom o b'mareh. Moshe Rabbeinu was absolute intellect. People, this is what the Rambam says. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have a gap between his madameh and his sechel. He was always in a state of absolute intellectual perfection and absolute imaginative capacity perfection. He was never not in a prophetic state. Okay? Uvavo Moshe lo al moed ledaber ito, vayishma et hakol midaber elav vayidaber elav. Moshe walks to the tent, God speaks to him. Kol hanaviyim al yidei malach. Lefikach roim Hashem roim b'mashal v'chida. The malach is the internal malach who presents you with a vision. And sometimes there's a clear pitaron answer, sometimes it isn't. Moshe Rabbeinu lo yidei malach shene'emar per per. Why all these sentences about Moshe in the Torah? What do they mean? Do we take them seriously? Rambam does. Pe el pe adaber bo is a special means of direct communication. V'ne'emar v'diber Hashem el Moshe panim el panim. V'ne'emar utmunat Hashem yabit. He will see God, as it were, as directly as any human being can. Klomar she'en sham mashal el ro'eh davar al buryo v'lo chida u'v'lo mashal. Moshe and the Torah isn't transmitted to us in visions which need to be unpacked or in paradoxes or puzzles. Torah midi ala b'mareh v'lo b'chidot. All of these are psukim in the Torah. A vision, but no puzzle. She'einenu mitnabei b'chida ela b'mareh shero'eh davar al buryo. Kol hanaviyim yirayim and nibhalim. Remember, all the prophets are twitching and shaken, and they are in terrible fear. Eimah chashicha gedola. Moshe Rabbeinu enoken. Moshe Rabbeinu remains as sober and as stable as ever. Kashe yidaber ish el re'ehu. Why does the Torah say that? Because the way that God communicated with Moshe, the highest of all prophets, the unique one, okay? Lo haya k'Moshe od, okay? This is a theological fact which we need to take seriously. And that, of course, makes the Torah binding, not the visions. Moshe and his stature. Again, an anti-Islamic polemic. Klomar k'mo she'en adam nivhal lishmoa divrei chavero, כך היה כוח בדעתו של משה רבנו להבין דברי הנבואה ההוא, הוא עומד על עומדו שלם. כל הנביאים אין מתנבאים בכל עת שירצו. You cannot pick the time to prophesy. You wait for God, and it might never happen. משה רבנו אינו כן, אלא כל זמן שיחפוץ, רוח הקודש לא ושתו. Look at this. First of all, he gets filled with Ruach HaKodesh. והנבואה שתורה עליו, and then the nevuah comes and rests upon him. ואינו צריך לכוון דעתו להזדמן לה, שהרי הוא מכוון ומזומן ועומד כמלאכי השרת. The one prophet who is like an angel never changes, never descends to the level of humanity really. לפיכך מתנבא בכל עת שנאמר, עמדו ואשמע מה יצווה השם, לכן Moshe says, wait, I'm going to have a chat with God, and I'll tell you what you need to do. This was at Pesach Sheni, okay? Stand. I'll just go and speak to God, and I'll receive a divine communication. ובזה הבטיחו האל שנאמר, לך אמור להם שובו לכם לאוהליכם, ואתה פה עמוד עמדי. This is a crowning pasuk. Moshe at Har Sinai, God says, tell everybody to go home. Okay, the big show is over. And we said a little about what happened on Har Sinai. The big show is over. Everybody go home. But va'ata, look at those words. Ata po amod imadi. They've all gone home. You are standing here with me forever. Moshe never leaves Sinai. He's on the top of the mountain for the rest of his life. And that's why you cannot compare him to any other prophet. So definitely not the Havdil Elef, Havdalot, Jack, Muhammad, right? Definitely not. This is Moshe Rabbeinu, who's in a class absolutely of a stellar quality. Halamadata, shekol hanavim kishanavua mistaleket mehem chozrim lo ohalam. Every other prophet goes back home, resumes his normal life, tries to keep a high standard, and is prepared to have a prophetic vision, but he lives a normal life, back to his wife and kids. Like everybody eats, drinks, and whatever. Rambam has a thing about women, you may have noticed, okay? And they do not separate themselves from their wives. Moshe Rabbeinu lo chazar la'aholo harishon. Moshe Rabbeinu, after Sinai, after he'd received that revelation at the level of intensity, Sinai, never goes back to his wife, never goes home. His sons may have suffered a bit for that, but never mind. לפיכך פירש מן האישה לעולם ומן הדומה לו. Anything connected with anything physical, not for Moshe. ונקשרה דעתו לצור העולמים. His mind was totally fixed on the rock of all worlds. ולא נסתלק מעליו ההוד לעולם. The splendor of that elevated status never left him. And now we understand why his face shone. It doesn't mean that he had to necessarily, but there's something about him that said, I am no longer part of this regular human existence. Kadesh kamalachim. Now, all this, of course, is in the Mishneh Torah. All right? This is for every one of us to understand and to absorb. Okay, we better move
Did
on a
Rambam,
bit. And
Rambam-
this is the last section.
Dr. Sinclair,
And
did Rambam think he was
and here he says something that I said before. A Navi might, your internet connection is unstable. It's back to being stable. A prophet can have an internal prophecy, which makes him a higher being, להוסיף דעתו, and increases his knowledge, עד שידע מה שלא היה יודע מאותן הדברים הגדולים, ואפשר שישולח לעם מימי הארץ, עוד אנשי עיר או ממלכה לכונן אותם או להודיעם מה יעשו. But he might become an instrument of God, and he goes off to a people or a nation, he advises them what to do or not to do, וכשמשלחים אותו נותנים לו אות ומופת. And then he comes armed with signs and wonders. So this, I guess, Yoshua, is the answer to your question. Okay? Hilchot Yisodei Torah, Perek Zayin. You will come armed with an ot or a mofet, a sign or a wonder. Kedei sheyidu ha'am sha'el shlacho be'emet. That God has really sent me. You'll do something extraordinary. But of course, rationally speaking, lots of people can do signs and wonders. Can we trust them? Now the Rambam comes in with a very important thing. The only candidate for Nevuah who offers us a sign or a wonder and we will believe is somebody who we know personally has got all the qualities that Rambam has set down. Whereas if Muhammad was to come along and produce marvelous signs and wonders, we wouldn't believe him because he is Muhammad. But if Moshe Rabbeinu comes along, because we know him and where he is, then we'll accept the signs. So when Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Im Bria Yivra Hashem," at the rebellion of Korah, if God will do this and will swallow them up, then we will believe that the earth swallowed up these evil people because they're evil, not because the earth swallowed people up. Other people can make earth swallow people up because it is Moshe Rabbeinu who's making the earth open up. And you could still have skeptics, and they undoubtedly were, who said after the earth swallowed up Korach, Moshe Rabbeinu knew how to predict earthquakes. Okay, you can do that. Eliyahu HaKarmel says, Aneni Hashem Aneni. Answer me twice. He says it twice, Aneni. Why? First time, send some fire from heaven. But then, second time, make the people believe that it's heavenly fire, not me, who happens to have the knowledge of physics to the extent that I can produce fire off my own bat. Okay? So this is what Rambam tells us about the Ot and the Mofet. Difference between a Navi Emet and a Navi Sheker. And he says that we've been commanded to believe the Navi Emet, who has all the qualifications, who produces the sign and the wonder, and we do it, and he's interesting because to the very end, he preserves his rational stance and says, look, we can only hope, all right? He says, beginning of line 20, We will resolve a case in court on the testimony of two kosher witnesses. Do we really know that they've absolutely told the truth? We can never know. Court of law, human beings, Bernard Wolfson, we can only believe, right? We can never know 100%. I mean, the victim of the murder can never tell the court, yes, he did it, okay? So there is a little element, as human beings, we have to have a bit of faith. And then, so Rambam ends up with Hanistarot Lashem Eloheinu Vaniglot Lanu. We can only judge by what we can see. The Nistar, what's hidden, only God knows. But we have to judge according to our rational capacity. When we have somebody with the qualifications and a sign and a wonder and a message that seems right, that's a prophet we have to believe. V'ne'emar ki ha'adam yireh la'inayim. Back to the book of Samuel, God says human beings are only expected to see as far as their eyes take them. Hashem yireh la'leva. God alone. So the last few minutes, I'm going to deal with two issues here, which you'll have to read by yourselves, because I won't be able to read the whole text. Did Maimonides believe that he'd reached the level of prophecy? Avram Yoshua Heschel wrote a whole article, and he said yes. First of all, Rambam sometimes lapses. And in the first extract, which is from the introduction to the Moreh Nevukhim, he's talking about prophets who have this tremendous insight, okay? And then he uses the plural term we, okay? Us, shenachshevenu yom, shenashuv. Now, Ababanel immediately picks this up. Is Maimonides saying that he is a prophet? We talked about the seeing like a flash of lightning, special sight. Does he really mean that? If he doesn't, then he shouldn't have used the we. He should have said they. Rabbi Shem Tov Ibn Falakera is a very interesting figure. Don't have time to talk about him. He wrote a commentary called Moreh HaMoreh. He says, Kira livrakim ksat ma sheiru hanavir. It's a nice move here. A little bit of what the prophets see. Rambam would have been prepared to attribute him to himself a small degree of prophecy. Avaer ma she'efshar lavaro mima'aseh Bereshit u'ma'aseh Merkava shitbaer elai b'meh she'abinotiv mizeh. Rambam is going to explain to us Maaseh Bereshit, but he doesn't have a tradition. It's been made clear to him. Clear to him how? This is a very profound idea. Is he hinting at having a little prophecy there? Now, Heschel has an argument, and he says that Rambam talks about prophecy, talks about the aspiration to be a prophet, and he says one would have expected then that the students or whoever Rambam was speaking to would have said, okay, if it can be done, and you're the greatest rabbi around we know, do it. So what he says at the end, Yadayim mochichot, one on page 3, שהרבה סוגיות שנשנו במורה נבוכים לא נאמרו אלא למי שישתדל להגיע אל השלמות. Clearly, the aspiration for perfection is the main theme in the Moreh Nevukhim. Okay?
19 people. You see, I was spot on.
מי שיבחר בשלמות האנושי ושיהיה איש אלוהים באמת, ימלא לעצמו. So who is the paragon of this? It has to be. That's Heschel's view. Heschel believed in prophecy, and we don't. But okay, the fact is that Rambam's, and this is how I'm going to close, Rambam's deep treatment of prophecy, his clear description of a path that enables all human beings, in theory and a few in practice, to rise to the very heights of what is human perfection, surely means that it's not a one-time thing. Yehuda Levi is no problem. God picks a prophet at a certain stage in history. no more prophets. Okay, fine. But Rambam says this is part of our natures. It's the wisdom. So why can't we be a prophet today? Well, you could say we're in Chutz La'aretz. There is a theory that if you are close to Geula, and the Rambam lived close to a time that they predicted Geula, then you are, as were considered to be living in Eretz Yisrael because you're living in hope of Geula. But that's a whole other argument. But mystics and rationalists, right through the ages, have claimed to be, at least on the lower levels of prophecy, Yoshua, this is an answer to the question you asked me, are the bottom of the ladder or a few rungs up. And not only mystics like Rabbi Avraham Abulafia, who definitely seems to indicate that he is on the low level of prophecy, rationalists too. The Chazon Ish is very interesting. I have two long extracts from the Chazon Ish. The second one looks exactly like the Rambam from which it is taken. The Chazon Ish, and this follows the Rogatchover in a way. He was also mediating between the Moreh Nevukhim and the Mishneh Torah. Chazon Ish seems to apply that somebody like him could be a partaker in prophecy. And the ideal Lithuanian Talmid Chacham, who knows all of Halacha, who is rigorous in his logic, who is virtuous, absolutely, in his personal life, who has no physical needs, doesn't care where he lives, doesn't care what he eats, doesn't care how much money he earns, is day and night just thinking about halachic sugyot. Chazon Ish implies that this is a part of prophecy. And therefore, he says that Mishorshei ha'emunah shekol ha'ne'emar, okay, במשנה, גמרא, הלכה, אגדה, הם הדברים שנתגלו לנו על ידי כוח נבואי, שהוא כוח נשיקה של השכל הנאצל עם השכל המורכב בגוף. These are Maimonidean concepts. The Chazon Ish uses them. Okay, this is the combination of the two. רוח הקודש הוא שפע מהשכל הנאצל על השכל המורכב, והאדם משתתף על ידי יגיעת העיון ברוב עמל ובמשנה מרץ עד שמתווסף בו דעת ותבונה בלתי טבעי. When you have an amazingly and unnatural ability in halacha, you know everything. This is your Lithuanian Talmid Chacham hero, okay? Rav Eliashiv and Rav Shach and the Chazon Ish himself, their whole lives devoted only to one thing, every waking moment, knowing it all. There's no philosophy here, no science, no chemistry, no metaphysics. We've taken the Rambam and we are adapting it to what we believe in. And then you will be able, and this you have to look at the next bit, to perhaps gain a vision of what it is to be a leader of the Jewish people, to solve the problems of the time. The Haredi, Litvish Gaon, okay, Goyen, sees it as yeshivas, learning, intensity, and keeping young men in the fold. They are participants in this prophetic track. The mystics, the Mukubalim, do exactly the same thing. Every aspiring mystic is on the path of Ruach HaKodesh, and Rambam's Moreh Nevukhim, you may be surprised to know, is learned in Kabbalah yeshivot, but given an entirely different approach, takes it out of the Andalusia, which Maimonides was so fond of, into Kabbalah. So I think that I have basically overstepped my time, but I'm going to stop the share because this is the end of our treatment of prophecy. If you want to, if there's a question you'd like to ask, now's the time. You can send me a mail, but I've tried to sum it all up and give you something that Rambam was thinking about most of his life, okay? Because as I said, He had planned to write a Sefer Nuvoah, but instead we had the chapters on prophecy in the Moreh Nevukhim. We had a little taste, okay, and I tried to bring it to an end point here, but they're definitely very concerned to draw a distinction between Moshe and the other prophets. And of course, there's a famous Gemara in Yevamot, Daf Mem Tet, Amud Bet. And it says that Kol HaNevi'im istaku baspaklaria she'ena mira uchesavurim liroto v'lo ra'u. Moshe Rabbeinu nistakel baspaklaria amira v'yada shelo ra'uhu b'fanav. It's a wonderful line of Gemara with a commentary by Rashi. All the prophets, they didn't see God clearly. They were in this fit of trance. They were in a state of trauma. They see a vision. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's not. But Moshe Rabbeinu, B'chol beiti ne'eman hu, in my entire house, he's always there, Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, these prophets, some of them in the vision saw God. Yeshayahu va'ere et Hashem tzvaot yoshev al kisei. They thought they saw God. Moshe Rabbeinu saw much more than they did, but he knew that he never saw God. And this is possibly the humility or anava that Moshe Rabbeinu is celebrated. Aish Moshe anav ma'od, not because he needed to be humble. He was the greatest living man ever, and he was aware of his greatness. But his greatness compelled him to say, I do not have the whole truth. This was the greatness of Moshe. The greatest of all men knew that he didn't know everything, whereas lesser men think when they reach a certain level that they do. And this also may explain the fact that the Torah praises Moshe with anava, not with chokhmah or tzidkut or any other virtue or property. Okay, so if there are no questions, then Yoshua, you're muted. You're muted. Yoshua, you're muted. I can't hear you. Unmute. Yael, can you unmute?
Okay, now I'm unmuted.
Okay.
I still don't understand why God speaks sometimes to simple people who have nothing from this level, like Avimelech. Why is Avimelech spoken to?
Lot sees 3 angels. That is a very good question. Where did Yoshua go? Why? Right, I can see you. Okay. So what we're going to have to say here is that at that instant of time, and this is what the Rambam says, it's very important. That instant of time, it's like Eshet, Manoah. They're simple people, okay? But simple people connect with something great, some point in their lives. Lot is in Sodom. You dismiss him, a nothing, okay? But there is something virtuous in him. And he's grappling with this, okay? He's thinking about this. He says, I don't fit in. He's feeling existential angst. Then he has a vision and he's saved. Well, he's partially saved, okay? But what happens is that there are people who will, just as there are people who prepare themselves to the highest degree of perfection and never receive a prophecy, some people will not have prepared themselves, but they will have grappled with, because of the situation they are in, because of the place in which they find themselves, will be able to rise up for a very short period of time, because they're the same of Bilam, who was a great prophet, but again, misused his gifts for a certain period of time. You can say this of non-Jews. You can say this of righteous non-Jews who do amazing things. What saved Jews during the Holocaust, saw a vision of some sort, okay? Something convinced them, and they had a dream. All of this is part of this very complex phenomenon called Nevuah, maybe Ruach HaKodesh. Hagar has a vision, and she has a malach, okay? But she is in a very tense state, and she's thinking about relationship with Avraham, Avraham's son. What will happen? Will there be a future? And all this produces, for a brief window of opportunity, something like a prophetic spirit.
But Hagar was already used to see.
Because she'd been thinking about the problem of Yishmael as you would if you had been Hagar. How do I fit in and my son with Abraham? It's a problem. So she's thinking about it more and more deeply. And then at the critical time, she gets a vision, which is whether they were really thirsting for water or not. There's a vision, and somehow Yishmael is ensured of an important future.
And according to Rambam, was Sodom destroyed, or was it still the following of the prophetic dream? It's the big question of Rambam.
That is a question, and there is no clear-cut answer. Rambam, apparently, he doesn't actually address this, would say the whole thing is a prophetic vision. It is a dream. Ramban says, what do you mean? Okay, so the argument, and nobody has to accept what Maimonides says, okay? We're just explicating. You wanted to learn Moreh Nevukhim. I am trying to open Moreh Nevukhim up to you. It's a complex, very complex project, but we are starting. By the time we finish Divine Providence, Hashgacha Pratit, and the problem of evil, and the reasons for the commandments, you'll probably know a lot more about Maimonides' philosophy than you actually wanted to know. But I think that when we come to the end, you'll have some taste of the complexity and of the issues. Whether it's relevant very much to our world or problems we grapple with today, I'm not sure, okay? It's certainly inspired Jews right through Jewish history to engage with all sorts of things. General culture and learning, Kabbalah, rationalism, and it's a very exciting thing, even today, which is amazing, because it's a 12th century book, 1119 here, and here we all are trying to learn it, okay? But anyhow, one point of order. Next week, there's no Shiur. Chol HaMoed Sukkot, I'm going to put this on the WhatsApp, Yael, okay? There'll be no Shiur. We are away. Chol HaMoed Sukkot. We'll enjoy ourselves. We'll have Simchat Chag. And in Yetz Hashem, we'll continue the Wednesday after, and we'll start a new topic, which is Hashgacha. Okay, Jack, that is divine providence. Does God intervene at all in what happens in the world? Okay, and then, of course, after that, the $64,000 question, problem of evil. So I'd like to wish everybody a Chag Sameach, a Pit Katava, which is in French, a guten Kvittel, okay? And all the very best. Have a wonderful